Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know if you can see and hear me. We got one watching, so I'll wait a second. I know I've been absent for a while, so I figured I'd jump on here tonight start screaming into the void of the internet. Lots of strangeness continuing to happen in the world, nothing slowing down there. In fact, it's probably even weirder. It's probably even more weird stuff going on in the world. So let's see if we can get a few people to roll in here. 4, 4 personas. Loud and clear, good to go. Cool. So sorry, probably going to mostly be talking about tonight. Don't have a whole lot going on, but I definitely want to talk about the weirdness surrounding the eclipse and there's nothing too weird about the eclipse itself, but we've seen so many weird things from mostly local governments, I think, but state and county level governments and other institutions talking about um, different types of ways you should prepare for the solar eclipse. So Matthew Stone says, what's going on April 8th? So it's this solar eclipse that is going to be visible, at least partially, from most of the country. Let me see if I can find the map and post a link to it. But there's a lot, if you guys haven't seen, so here, I'll post a link in the chat of where the hell did I lose there we go. That's the map of this eclipse. It's going to drag across the kind of like starting from right through San Antonio and Dallas and up through Arkansas, just kind of across the US in like a band that's maybe a couple hundred miles wide, 100 miles wide, something like that, to where you'll get like the total view of the eclipse and like total blackout, and you'll be able to see at least partial from most of the country from what I've heard. But there's nothing too weird about that. We've had eclipses before. There's nothing other than a few minutes of darkness that goes along with eclipses that is weird in any way. Um, but we've seen a lot of weird things with people like, oh, we're activating the National Guard to deal with the eclipse, and some warnings from local governments to stock up like food and water and all this other stuff to prepare for the eclipse. And everyone's like, what the hell are you talking about? Why would you need to do any of that to prepare for an eclipse? It's not like it's even a hurricane or something like that. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's just them trying to find any reason to or to like kind of excuse why they're doing increased National Guard and police presence for other reasons. I don't know if it doesn't make sense to me that some people are saying like, oh, there's going to be a cyber attack. Like you would have to know about it ahead of time, know that there's going to be a cyber attack weeks out. That doesn't make any sense. Um, so I really don't think anything in particular is going to happen that day. If they knew there was like a solar storm, and like I would assume that the moon being in the way of the sun would potentially block any sort of like EMP activity from the sun if that was a concern anyway, would at least partially block it, right? I don't know how that works. I don't believe in science, but yeah. So if you guys have any theories as to why they are any of these governments have issued, local governments have issued preparations, because it's not even something that, some people are saying, oh, if the tourists flood into town, like really? Or is somebody in Oklahoma, or wherever some of these places that issued these warnings, really anticipating a level of tourism for this thing that would cause any sort of problems? And the you know instructions or recommendations preparation don't even make sense for that. They're not like, hey, it might be busy, so get your errands. It's weird stuff like prepper type stuff, which obviously everyone should do. Should have water, should have. Let me see if I can find some of these announcements to just show you how kind of weird it is. Prepare for eclipse. Yeah, warnings ahead of solar eclipse and how to prepare. New York officials warn of major gridlock across state during total solar eclipse. Um, Map shows warnings. Here we go, Newsweek. Map shows warnings for people to stock up on food ahead of solar eclipse. And that's from Newsweek. So you know what I'm saying? Like if you're worried that it was going to be busy, a solar eclipse that lasts what, 15, 20 minutes, something like that? Um, let's see if it says. I don't even know how long it lasts. Let's say it lasts 2 hours. Even if you're worried that it would be like busy tourism for like 2 hours, why would you be extolling people to like stock up on food? Like that's not something that you would ever come into play for a several hour kind of traffic jam. Very strange. Very strange. It says many states within the solar eclipse's path of totality have issued warnings in the weeks leading up to the astronomical phenomenon. On April 8th, the moon will be positioned so that the entire disk of the sun will be blocked out in several U.S. states, plunging millions of people into darkness during the early afternoon. The path of totality will start in Mexico and extend across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, blah, 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 before out through Maine. So basically, a straight line from like Dallas and San Antonio up through Maine is the path of totality. It says it's expected to draw crowds from around the nation as people head to areas in path of totality to witness the eclipse. They voiced concern about stretched public safety resources and enormous strain on local hospitals and congested roadways. I get the traffic a little bit, maybe, but are that many people really planning on traveling for this thing in any major way? It can't be worse than just like the average amount of travel for like the holidays or something. At least four states are warning residents to stock up on food before the 2024 solar eclipse. Several other states have closed schools and warned of overwhelming traffic. That part I get, like it's going to be busy, we think maybe. So let's just shut this stuff down. But it says Texas officials have issued a slew of warnings, including that people living within the path of how they should stock up on groceries and gas and run any errands such as filling prescriptions in the days before the eclipse. One official also urged pet owners to stock up on supplies for their animals. Seems like a little bit overboard, if you ask me. I don't even recall seeing that many like specific orders for preparation or recommend in like hurricane season in Florida. It might just be because it's so ubiquitous that they don't bother doing it much anymore, or it just is in the background and I never, you know, got used to it. But very strange. Very strange because there's nothing particularly, yeah, why is it becoming a mini Y2K? Exactly. It's very strange to me. Yeah, so it looks like it'll just miss me. No need to paint my roof blue. Yeah, you can always eat your animals if you don't get enough cat chow or something like that. It says, are these warnings only for towns and cities in the path of totality? From what I can tell, yes. It at least states that at some point include the totality in them somewhat, like Oklahoma or whatever. So it might be like a state level warning, but at least part of that state has that issue. So it may just be them going overboard because as far as I know, like we're not seeing these kind of warnings in states that aren't going directly in the path. So, if you were thinking it was like a nationwide cyber attack and they're using the um eclipse, I can't brains not working. Using the eclipse as cover, then it wouldn't make sense to only do it in the states. Yeah, similar set of warnings is posted for the Niagara Falls, New York area. I think that's still pretty close to where it goes. But at least one of them was talking about like the National Guard was being deployed for the eclipse, which is very strange to me. Click to Houston. Why has the National Guard been deployed to Texas for the upcoming solar eclipse? However, the presence of the National Guard in Texas has raised some eyebrows and sparked curiosity among the public. It's only okay, so the path is only 70 miles wide. Yeah, I said about 100. And three types of folks are flooding into that 70-mile wide path. Yeah, but this isn't like it's 70 miles across the entire country, which you can see from anywhere in that 70 mile. This isn't like one city. You could park like anywhere on the side of the highway in any of the in that band. So I don't see why it would be particularly flooded with people in any dangerous way. I mean, anytime you have a significant movement of people, it's worth knowing about. But like if you didn't already stock up on food for general preparedness, it seems like a bizarre reason to all of a sudden be worried that you're going to need food because of a eclipse, it's going to last 30 minutes or whatever. That's another thing I need to look up. How long exactly will a solar eclipse last? I don't think it's very long, at least for the totality portion. Says if you're in the path of totality, expect it to last about 4 minutes. So a 4 minute darkness in the afternoon in a insanely large amount of square miles across the country to where you could be anywhere in that and still see it pretty well. Not too sure what they're worried about. So that's my assessment, is that nothing's going to happen. They're just being weird. What's up, South of DCL? What's up, High Desert Pioneer? Yeah, ask the Chat GPT what's happening. Why are they activating National Guard for the solar eclipse? So like I said, I don't think it's anything other than being weird. If it is anything beyond what they're just superficially saying, I would guess it is only that they want a little bit of excuse for doing slightly elevated police and military presence and stuff like that than they would be otherwise, just because of everything that's going on in the world. But I think a key point is, like someone was pointing out, that if they're not doing this in other states, other than the ones that have, the path of totality, then it probably isn't related to anything other than the eclipse, because otherwise it wouldn't be useful anyway to only tell those states. If it's something that's going to theoretically affect everyone, like if they thought there was going to be a major solar flare or a cyber attack timed with it or something like that. So I just think it's government being weird, and I don't even want to say inefficient, but not good at identifying like what the problems are going to be and how to deal with them. I'm always in favor of telling people to be prepared and stuff, but I think there's another side of that, which is hyping up nonsense can kind of turn people away from preparedness too. Telling people that they need to like stock up food and do all these preparedness related things for something that's going to end up being a absolute nothing burger that lasts 4 minutes. And for the most people, they might notice some extra traffic, and that's going to be about the end of it. Um, I think trying to link that to like preparedness is just going to make it seem like another pointless thing to do. Whereas there's plenty of realistic things we've seen happening in the world and the United States to justify stockpiling food, stockpiling water, doing all the basic prepper stuff, that you don't need to be like the solar eclipse. There's going to be tourists. Make sure you have food for Ruffy. Like, yes, you should have extra food for your pets, but it shouldn't be because extra people are going to be in your town for 4 minutes. What's your take on the Baltimore Port bridge collapse with the cargo ship? It's a weird one. There has also been like one or maybe even two collisions with bridges since then, which is very interesting. Um, there's people who say that this is just one of those things where they actually happen all the time, like the train derailments, and now that they just start making, once one of them becomes kind of, I don't want to say famous, but gets widespread media, then everyone else starts seeing and sharing the results of the other ones, which would have happened anyway and do happen relatively frequently. And we do know that a lot of these bridges are specifically designed with those, I think they're called dolphins. So, they're specifically built with ship collisions in mind and preventing that. So it is obviously a thing that happened or could happen and needs to be dealt with. But this particular bridge was an interesting one to because it was uniquely susceptible to this and simultaneously super important for like the port there, and a lot of apparently hazardous material specifically gets transported across that bridge by truck. So it could cause some like supply chain disruptions in the US. And those people pointed out that it was like a Ukrainian crew. I don't see anything there to suggest that it was automatically one thing or another. There's definitely enough to reason to suspect that it could have been some kind of attack. But obviously, like I said, these things have happened in the past and do just happen sometimes. It certainly looked like the thing turned right into the into the upright for the bridge. Whereas, yeah, so it certainly seems sus, as the kids say, but we don't have any hard proof that it was on purpose, obviously. Excuse to execute war games and see how a significant part of the public response to government warnings, extra police and military presence, maybe. Yeah, I mean that's what I was saying. It could be all that, but we see that I think it's just more government being inefficient and bad at these things. These are lower level government. These aren't federal, as far as I can tell. The highest level I've seen of anything done for the solar eclipse stuff is National Guard, which is still state level. And we've seen weird stuff like with the New York nuclear PSA. Like these are things that government should be doing, at to some level. They just should be doing it more consistently. They should be doing it in a much better job of it. They should be doing it for real events, not something that's not going to almost certainly isn't going to be an issue for most people. But I think they just needs to be more of like a culture of basic preparedness and less of a focusing on these specific incidents and then forgetting and then going back and forget. You know what I mean? Like it just should just always be a baseline and like use it to remind people after all these little things. When Chase the Fan finally happens, younger generations be too busy hunting internet server farms for more TikToks to be a real threat. Multiple ports, major one for vehicles and farm equipment that will cause the same problem. Yeah, I mean it's a major port regardless. So yeah, it could cause some issues for sure. But it's hard to say. It's nothing, that can't be dealt with in other ways. It's not like the only way that we can do certain things. So in that sense, it would be interesting to just but I don't doubt that we're have experienced, are experiencing, and will continue to experience low level attacks like this. If similar to that, even if that wasn't an attack, we know we've had people who've shot up power stations and stuff in the past. Whether those are people who are acting on their own or are, some kind of agent who snuck in. It's not that hard to get people into the country. So we know this stuff is going to happen and continue to happen. Whether or not this is exactly as an example of it, doesn't really matter in my mind because we know this stuff is vulnerable. We know it's going to be utilized as an attack vector increasingly in the future, especially if slash when we go into direct conflict with China or Russia, which is almost certainly going to happen. Um, I was holding out hope, for a couple years that they may not be that stupid, but it seems like they have decided, probably correctly, that this is the last chance for the, you know, US dollar system and its hegemony, and it just has to be protected at all cost, even if that means, they're not going to cede it willingly or passively. So they'd much rather go into direct war with some of the biggest militaries in the history of humanity than to just say, well, we got to try something else and give up that that current system, which either way is going to end disastrously for us. So it doesn't really matter in that sense, but I'd much rather be the way that's purely financial chaos and not World War III, but it seems like they've made up their mind about that. So as like I predicted in my past video that we wouldn't see nuclear detonation of any kind for the next 2 years. I think that 2 years is up in September, and I still am holding to that, but I'm extremely I think it's extremely high likely that something will happen within the next 5 to 10 years. So I definitely think that everyone should get, where is it? Your CBR and gas mask filter. I have a link here. I'll post it because this stuff there's a long wait now. I like Mira. They've got great stuff. That's what I have. They're not the only choice, but I have their stuff. I know it's great. Put the link in the description there, and then afterwards I'll put it also. Because there's a wait on that stuff now, probably of a couple weeks. And if there is even a single, like maybe a test might get some people antsy, but even a test will cause the wait to be long. And if there's some sort of detonation that's not a test, even if it's just a tactical one in Ukraine in an empty field, like that availability of any of that stuff is going to be gone. Anything CBRN related will just disappear instantly. Like you won't get it for months. 6 months, if you're lucky, will be the wait list because it's probably 6 weeks right now. Yeah, happy Easter to everyone as well. So I definitely recommend that if you have basic prep squared away, they were running a sale at Mira for like a pack, like a combo pack of like a mask, some of the potassium iodide, a few filters, and it was a great deal for that level of masks. What's up, David the Good? How you doing? You might recognize this, which you guys should check out. This is the latest offering from David the Good. I had just got it in the mail, so I haven't had a chance to crack it open yet. This is Minimalist Gardening. Check that out on Amazon. He is the author of some great survival gardening books, including Compost Everything. And I've always enjoyed gardening, but never been a fan of how complex and how much work and everything seemingly has to go into it. So I'm excited about minimalist gardening. No sweat, man. I'm excited to read it. I like that it's beefy. No pamphlets over here. This is a real book. It's not like the famous Jewish sports legend pamphlet from Airplane. Some light reading. Happy Easter to you as well, ABC Patriot. Yeah, so that's interesting. So if you guys have any ideas other than that, I think the eclipse will be a nothing burger. I think the boat attack crash is suspect, but I don't have any reason to say one way or the other because it's certainly shit happens sometimes too, as they say. So what else we got going on in the world? Yeah, happy Easter. Let me see if I got more Civil War coming out. Yeah, that's why you got to get your I have all sorts of shit on my desk here, by the way. Your Riz shades. Like, what kind of American are you? Kind that gardens and rules the wasteland with survival fishing kits? Shit's a fan. It will be good to have some gardening books on hand. Absolutely. I mean, that goes for anything too, not just gardening, but I do definitely recommend having like because you can get the stuff cheaper, most books for PDF format, or not PDF, but Kindle format. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially if it's something that only applies in a grid up scenario. But I like, first of all, I just physically like having a copy of something. Stuff has been changed or taken away from digital accounts before. That's only going to get worse in the future. And then certainly in a grid down or even internet down scenario, a lot of that stuff will not be accessible. I'm increasingly disturbed by how much, and this is goes to show you how interconnected and fragile the system's going to be, is that how many things you can't access without an active internet connection, even if you have power. So if the internet's out, it just doesn't work. You can't access your account, you can't check stuff that you supposedly own or look things up, even if it doesn't need the internet technically, it uses it for authorization or somewhere along the line, the internet is used for sending some kind of communication that will affect the ability of whatever that is to function. So you don't even need to have power go down completely to have a lot of this stuff become useless. And I hate that. I even hate how much you can't even log into basic websites without also needing your phone for like a second factor authentication. And I know that that's for security, that's good, but you can't even turn it off. So if your phone breaks, you're shit out of luck. Like even this website that I bid on storage unit auctions to resell, like I have to log in there. They have to send a text to my phone. I'm like, this isn't my bank account. Like, what the hell do I even? It's so annoying. There's no option. You have to have a phone. It has to call your phone or text you or something almost every time you log in. So everything's so interconnected. So we know that at some point one of those things is going to go down. Doesn't even need all of them. You don't even need a huge power outage. You don't even need a nationwide internet outage. You could just have one of those things happening in small areas, and everything's going to be hard to function properly. And that's one of the reasons I know JJ did a video about this, why I was looking into satellite communication, and I think it's going to be an issue in any major event. I think it'll be great for regional events, and especially if it's just related to cell towers specifically, like what happened earlier this year, I think it was, where widespread cell outages, cell phone communications could be great for that. And also, sorry, satellite would be great for that and great for if you're in a area that just never gets good cell coverage, off-roading at a prepper compound, something like that. But in a major event, major cyber attack, major EMP, I don't think the satellite communications would work anyway, because even if your unit was protected in EMP and that particular satellite wasn't damaged, there's still relays and other systems or other points in the system that are ground based or terrestrial based that would need to be activated for recognizing that your account's valid, routing the signal, something along those lines that probably won't. So it might fail too. So much is interconnected that it prevents there from being a lot of minor failures because we have so many, it's such a complicated, technologically advanced system, but it does mean that when it fails, it could fail absolutely catastrophically and with a lot more widespread effects than you would expect. Padded yoke over your shoulders, carry 2 5-gallon buckets of water several tries per day, put them in bicycle and walk, water. Yeah. Yeah. If you have I need to dig a water well, but around here is 400 plus feet deep. Yeah, exactly. I think it's similar here. And in a lot of areas, you're not even technically allowed to when they're that deep because it's technically in the aquifer, but check into it. And, if it's that much cost, like if it's going to be 50 grand to dig a well, then that's just probably not the option you should go with. You should try to dig some kind of cistern, try to collect the even meager rainwater. If your system's big enough, you could still collect because even somewhere like here, like in the desert, if you have a extensive enough collection, there's still quite a bit of water in gallons that will could be collected over a roof or something like that. And or you just have, use your municipal water, fill up a giant cistern, pool sized, and then you have at least a year or two of, or several years worth of water in that case. Should be. If you're talking about just drinking, the gallon per day is a good metric, but I think that's usually supposed to include, you know, cooking and things like that too. Most people are not straight up drinking a full gallon of water a day. So you could stretch that. So if you have a few thousand gallons, especially if you have a big cistern, like a pool-sized pond or cistern or something like that, that's what I would try to look into. If you can't dig a well and you have the area, maybe try to put some sort of artificial pond in, or like a pool even. And or a closed cistern, if you can just get a big water tank, that works too. Because drilling a 400 deep wells, like I said, it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And then you have to have a non-hand pump. A hand pump isn't going to work for that deep anywhere close to it. So then you have to have alternate power to work some kind of pump as well. And it's going to be an expensive pump too for 400 feet. Fats and oil spoil. Sonny Crockett says, fats and oil spoil in a year, so you have to walk beside the bicycle, 100 pounds of stuff on the bike. It doesn't always spoil in a year. I mean, if you have them out, but you can have freeze-dried meats that has some fat in it, for even canned meats, canned butter that will last a hell of a lot longer than a year. If they're not preserved in that way, then you're right. Just have oil in a jar or something, it's not going to last for years. But canned foods obviously have lots of spam has a lot of fat in it, and a can of spam, and that could potentially last for decades if the seal isn't breached. So canned and freeze-dried stuff. You can't freeze dry like really fatty stuff too well. Like if it's a big, ream of fat through the steak, that's not gonna freeze dry too well. But milk can obviously be dehydrated or freeze dried, like the powdered milk. The eggs, the meats, butter can be canned, so you can get your fats and stuff for sure. Ghee, yeah, rendered butter, that stuff will last much longer. I don't want water bringing people to my spot. Yeah, that's why you would want it kind of hidden if possible. But I definitely think having some smaller type of canisters, like the 50-gallon drum somewhere, is great. 4,000 calories per pound in the oil, 2,500 in a pound of PB. Yep. A lot of that stuff is very dense. Fat's very dense. Hey, all from Midwest Indiana, says JKR. Welcome. There will be plenty of cats, good source of fat. There won't be plenty of cats for long if we're talking about a true like disaster scenario. They're not very big, and if there's even a few hungry people out there, I've talked about this before with like the people who are, planning on doing any significant sort of hunting or fishing or something like that. That the populations of these things will be, first of all, be decimated very, very quickly of anything in an event that there's a true grid down disaster scenario. People have to start looking outside their house for food. Anything that's walking, crawling, flying is just going to be eviscerated very quickly. And even if they're not, there's going to be so many people out there trying that it'll make it dangerous and unproductive. The one exception, I think, will be if you're like actually on the ocean and have a boat, because if we're in a situation where commercial fisheries go down of any kind, whether that's the shrimp boats or anything, if you have the ability to go after those animals, then you'll probably be in good shape because the commercial fisheries take just insane amounts of wildlife out of the ecosystem every year. So if those even partially suppressed, those populations will be very, very healthy, and most people won't have the ability to go out past, shore level fishing. So in the ocean, the populations of the edible animals could be extremely healthy, would be my guess, because as soon as the commercial fisheries are really depressing, like in any kind of way. So that's what I would expect anyway, because there's not too many individuals that would have the ability to go and just trawl for like tons of shrimp, like literal tons. Yeah, traps and nets are a hell of a lot easier than um, like direct hunting. But again, if you're in an area where people are going to be doing the same thing, not only will they be scaring the animals away, they'll be accidentally messing up your traps or purposely messing up your traps or finding them before you get a chance to check them and emptying the traps. So something to consider. Yeah, and the Great Depression game went scarce fast. Definitely believable. And the only exception would be if it was some kind of event that, really wrecked the human population first. Then obviously there would be a lot of wildlife. That's another point that Sonny Crockett brings up. It says cottontail rabbit is 500 calories, no fat. Right. So a lot of these animals too, there is really not a lot that you're getting off of it. If you start eating like wild birds, pigeons, like we're used to the mutated, obese, uh, Walmart chickens that you can get like 3 pounds of meat off of it. If you get to kill like a pigeon or something, you might get like a few ounces of meat off that thing. Discoria, holy statue needs to be in your yard. Is that the yams, the true yams? We're all a fan of this is a yam stan channel. We're a fan of the yams. I was actually considering or thinking about how you could because some of those yams, if that's what I'm thinking of, if that was the right plant. I don't believe in science, so I don't know the actual names of them. But I was wondering if there was like you could make like a some kind of double cage system to put that big yam in that then like part of it came above ground. I may not be articulating this well. And then you could use like an engine hoist to just like and it would the cage moving between the other cage would just like shear off all the smaller roots. So then you wouldn't have to dig up this giant yam and you could just after every 2 years just jack up this big meaty yam. But that might be a very kind of expensive way to just dig up a yam. But I'm talking about if these are the ones I'm thinking of, they're like the giant, like huge. If you let them sit for like 2 or 3 years, then they are okay. So this is a Chinese yam. It's not the one I'm thinking of. What's the one I'm thinking of? The giant ones. No fat in the flour to pigeon is 200 calories. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's surprising how little calories like real food is. That's why it's if that's what you're looking at for health in like good times, you should try eating like real foods just because they're not nearly as dense as stuff that has sugar and tons of fat in it. Like an egg, everyone's like, oh, egg's fat. They think of it as being fat. It has like 80 calories in a large egg. So you can eat an entire dozen eggs and you're at like 1,000 calories. And most people wouldn't even be able to eat a dozen eggs, certainly for one meal. And but it does show you that, in a real world situation when you don't have easy carbs, then it's not that easy to start racking up the calories. That's why calories are king in most situations. It says I won't be counting calories in the apocalypse. Everything but long pork is on the menu. Well, you should be counting calories because you want to make sure that you're not eating too many of your stash. You should be rationing it at least because you don't want to eat a whole lot extra than you need. But I get the point that you're not going to be worried about eating too much. But you have to make sure you're eating enough, first of all, especially if you're getting the right blend of macro and micronutrients. And then also, like I said, you want to make sure you're not eating too much because most of us are used to eating probably way more than we need in America. You can't eat enough meat or fish to keep from losing weight. I mean, not technically true, but it's very close to being true if you're talking about just like it's very hard to eat like enough salmon or just regular steak for most people to gain weight. That's a humongous bulk of food. You're talking about like pounds and pounds of meat to equal like a couple fast food value meals. And it all depends on how fatty it is, though. Non-fatty meat is extremely surprisingly low calorie. All the calories in meat comes from fat for the most part. So the fattier the cut, the more calories it will have. But yeah, it's extremely hard to eat like so much just steak or chicken or something like that, or eggs. Yeah, eggs are fantastic. Yeah, they really are. And it's so easy to feed chickens that I think that if you have the ability in your place, even if it's a small, you already should have a couple of them because you can literally turn like trash into one of the best foods out there, which is eggs, especially if you're in an area where you can have a small black soldier fly operation, some permacomposting. You can take literal trash, even rotten stuff that you wouldn't want to feed your chickens, even different kinds of manure, even human manure potentially, and turn that into the BSF larva, which is then great food and fitting food for the chickens, which you can then get real protein out of. He's here, well, he's in global warming with all that chili. I do my part of um to contribute to the methane. Chicken manure composting ability would then allow you to feed gardens. Yeah, exactly. So you can do both, and then the gardens can feed the chickens as well. They love to get some greenery in there. So you can make a pretty good little like ecosystem without having to have a huge homestead if you have like a small composting chicken vermiculture type operation. And you're still going to need outside inputs. It's very difficult to totally break free from needing outside inputs. And even the Amish people and everything, like they still go to the town and trade and store and everything like that. But you can set yourself up to be able to at least only need things that aren't the same things that everyone else needs, and need them far less frequently. Eat the babies. Oh, we got Jonathan Swift over here, Gunny Surgeon 67. Says the other white meat. Quote from Fat Bastard. Oh, I thought you were quoting a modest proposal. But yeah, so that's the one thing I do definitely miss out here being out in the desert on a tiny lot is having that little bit of because even in back in Florida, I only had a third of an acre, I think it was. But that's pretty big because my house wasn't very big. It was only like either 1,300 or 1,500 square feet, something like that. And it's always baffled me as to why houses in the US are like situated like halfway on the lot a lot of times, or even sometimes even back farther to where they'll have a big, you know, fairly big front yard. I'm like, what do you do with a front yard? Like, there's nothing other than enough space to park. Like, it's completely wasted. Your kids can't really play in it most of the time. You can't grow anything in it most of the time. You don't let your dog out. You don't typically fence in the front yard. It would make a ton more sense to me to have houses oriented so that they're pushed much more closer to the front. And on the same size lot, you can have a massive backyard. Massive. That's and because that yard would have been huge if they had done that. And it was still felt big to me, especially compared to the one I'm at now. And I was able to have, several chickens, composting. I had an aquaponics system set up back there for a while. It was awesome. David the Good says in about 1/7 of an acre, we grew 2,500 plus pounds of food last year. Yeah, hell yeah, exactly. You don't need that much space if you're doing it well and growing the right things. And it shows you what you could do if you have some real acreage too. And I think if you have a big front yard, turn in a food forest, no one really sees food in the jungle. True. If you're in one of those areas where they're not going to clamp down too hard. I found a spot with no HOA here. I mean, my front yard is like 50 square feet and it's gravel right now. But there's definitely at least you can always get away with trees in your front yard. So if you're in an area where they're going to have strict homeowners, or not even super strict, but you can't just garden as openly in your front yard, you can at least plant a couple trees or bushes of some kind, or even some of these yams we were talking about that this look like a normal bush, but then if the time comes, just dig it up and you get like a 10, 15 pound yam under there. I was able to successfully grow sweet potatoes are like a weed, man. Those were even in a sandy, shitty soil back in Gainesville, Florida. I was able to grow some sweet potatoes, which aren't true yams, but um, super easy to grow. I would get little ones, but you have to do almost no work, which is great. They're super easy to propagate. You can pretty much ignore them most of the time, and you'll still get something. And if you do it well, you can get a ton. Desperate arm starving people are not going to let you do anything of the kind, folks. Which kind? There's always, remember not to only think of the most extreme scenarios. We're also talking about scenarios where maybe just food is getting more and more expensive every year. Does that sound familiar? Dogs for security are underrated. Even a Chihuahua can save your life. Yeah, I mean, there's different types of um I would just differentiate between like an alarm dog and a guard dog. Like, yeah, they can wake you up, let you know when someone's there. That can save your life. And then the bigger dogs can actually help physically protect you as well. What's up, Brian Hill? I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for the super chat. I heard quail are easier to raise than chickens. The only difference, the quail eggs are quail eggs are tiny. And I've heard that I had a friend in Florida who grew like guinea hens, and they're actually like they're really noisy, but they can be like alarm animals can make all this crazy kind of noise when anything gets around, but you need some probably some acreage for that. Yeah, I'd love to see the HOA faces when there is a realize a serious food shortage one day. Could you grow any type of nut trees in Vegas? You can grow stuff out here. I know there's pomegranates grow out here, citrus people grow out here. Um, so there's definitely stuff you can grow out here. It's just, not nearly as easy. You have to do more of like a permaculture thing, make sure it's in certain areas where it's not going to get direct sunlight, maybe add some shade cloth, definitely supplement the water most of the time. But it seems like palm trees grow out here. So if you had like a 80 years to grow a date palm, you could probably make that work. But people do grow stuff out here. It's just not nearly as easy. And obviously their soil is like complete garbage. You have to kind of always container garden usually unless it's some kind of tree. Ducks are great for alarms too. Yeah, geese will actually attack too. The problem with most of these animals that can be alarms is they tend to just make noise constantly. So you have to kind of be attuned to when it's like the right noises and not just tune out everything they do it. Because, it's different. It's like dogs and any other animal. You kind of tell what type of, if it's like the scared noises or just them making noise. Because ducks and geese and guinea hens and chickens, they're just always making noise of some kind. But you hear ah, it's like, raccoons getting them one or something. It's gonna be different noises than when they're just clucking around. Yeah, you have little hydroponic. I've always said that if you're in a truly space restricted space, I don't think it makes sense to dedicate a lot of time, effort, or money to trying to grow things because there's no way you can do it that's really going to make because of like what we were talking about with how many calories are really in this stuff. Like you could have a pretty extensive balcony setup that works really well and is still just not going to give you more than a few thousand calories per month or something, where I think that money would be better spent just buying food, storing it, and then worrying about trying to maybe find a different scenario or something like that. Or planning ways to leave if something really serious happened, that sort of thing. Because there's just never a scenario where there's zero food and you're going to be able to make enough on your balcony, regardless of what kind of setup you have. So, but it is good to learn the processes. Like I said, supplement maybe some things that you might be hard to get. Yeah, exactly. Grow to supplement, store preps to survive. Because in most, unless you have at least some partial acreage like we're talking about with, once you get into quarter of an acre or more, then you can, or even like a seventh of an acre, like David was saying, but you got to have some outdoor space, some ground, at least, fifth of an acre, seventh of an acre, something along that of like actual open area, and to really start producing food that's going to make an actual difference, like a balcony, garage type setups, probably not going to happen. You can supplement stuff that might not be indigenous in your area, like if you're out here or somewhere and you want some kind of greens that you can't get naturally and you want to be able to continue to get them in when supply chains are disrupted or something, that's totally doable. But if you're like, I'm going to use this mini aquaponic system to survive the apocalypse on my balcony, there's just no way you can make enough food in that space. The amount of money it would take, you could probably easily just buy several years worth of freeze dried food and stash them under your bed, stuff like that, for the same amount that it would take to have such a extensive setup to grow in such a dense and unideal area. Amazon usually has a very fine book used about how to make a science or yeah, no Fed posting. Got to have a way to water that garden. Will you have water? Yeah, obviously that's one thing too. So if you're in an area where it's not natural precipitation, then that's something you have to consider too. Okay, $200 tax, perfectly legal and post. Yeah, well, of course, when you're talking about, hey, I appreciate it, David. Thank you very much. Surely I will use this money for ammunition. Book shows you how to counter, bore, muzzle, and tap it for female flips. There's all sorts of knowledge out there that if you want to put the work in. Growing tomato will perk up a meal made from your preps, avoid food stagnation. Sure. But yeah, I'm just pointing out that there's people who probably think that they're going to be like replacing a huge amount of the food that they would need by growing something in their bathtub or in their closet or in their balcony, and that's just not going to happen most of the time. And for it to happen, you would have to spend so much money and probably stockpile stuff anyway, like nutrient solutions or something along those lines. alternate power source for grow lights, whatever, all this stuff that it would just be easier to buy the food that you need directly and store that. That's my opinion anyway. Obviously, someone could prove me wrong. But all the people that I know of or have heard of that are growing large amounts of food off of a small area, it's at least an outdoor area. It's a yard, even if it's, just a 1,000 square foot yard or something like that. It's still a yard of 1,000 square feet. It's not a balcony. I have two Great Pyrenees, and they're great in letting us know when someone is around our house, but they also bark at their own shadow. Yeah, the two you can usually try. And Pyrenees were made to be like livestock guardians. So they are those type of dogs are usually going to be good for if you have chickens or something, they will like protect them and stuff and not eat them at the same time. Obviously, the stag chili is a fantastic way to prepare for the apocalypse. You just stack that stuff deep, the Laredo flavor, of course. And I still think they're one of the best. That and like the Spam straight up. But the Spam is even less of a complete meal. Like the stag chili, you can just eat. You don't have to add anything to it. It's a meal. The Spam is just a block of meat. But for the cost and everything, and the macro split, and the taste, and the longevity, I really don't think there's a better prepper food than the stag chili. You'll be eating the dogs most likely. Depends. Like I said, remember not to always get stuck into a particular view of shit the fan or disaster. There's all sorts of stuff that can happen. And don't just only look at the most dire scenarios of complete grid down. Where are we at time-wise? See my zoomy. All right, we're doing pretty good. Eric, another prepper channel, said the government is getting ready to recall IRR and other vets. What would you do if you got called up? Well, I'm no longer even in IRR. I'm completely out. I'm just turned 40 years old, and I had a fairly invasive spinal surgery a few months ago. So they would have to be pretty desperate before they sent me a letter. And I'm also not vaccinated. So, but I would theoretically, I would have a lot of problem with that if they tried to call me up. But it depends on what was going on, obviously. If we're being like literally invaded by the Chinese, then, I might have to strap the old boots on again if they needed me. But if they're just going to send me over to Ukraine to fuck with the Russians, hell no. Um, I think that I would assume I haven't heard that. If you want to post a link to that video or the channel name or something, I can check it out. But my guess is that they're exploring a lot of options right now, doing a lot of wargaming, talking about what it would, if we ever needed to do that, that sort of thing, because I'm sure it's in their mind whether they're going to have to do a draft or something. Like I said earlier in this stream, they really have decided that this is the hill the clown world wants to die on to prop up this current financial system. And that means taking or not allowing China, Russia, Iran, BRICS type alliance to continue doing what they're doing. Brian, thank you so much again. Any thoughts on NATO intervention in Ukraine this June? I think that it's going to completely increase. Like I just said, they've made it obvious that this is not something that they're going to let go, in my mind, unless they're completely bluffing. And I had said for the past couple of years since the special military operation started that there's no way Russia's going to lose unless and until NATO decides to put physical assets on the ground, actual NATO tanks and planes and stuff, and actual NATO troops. Because even if we keep giving Ukraine planes and tanks, they don't have enough people to keep this up. So I was hoping that they would run up to that line and then back down. It does not appear that they're going to back down, and we're seeing seems like France, particularly Poland, are all want the smoke, and the U.S. is more than happy to, at least right now, just financially supply that. So I think we're going to see it get a lot worse. And I definitely also think China is going to make some kind of move within the next, I think before the end of 2025 would be my guess. I've heard some people say before the end of 2027, but I would actually absolutely be blown away if they don't do something within the next 5 years. I don't think it'll take them that long. But maybe that'll draw our attention away from who knows what we'll do then. I don't know. I think it would be foolish to try and directly support Taiwan. But yeah, that's my general thoughts on it. But appreciate it, Brian. Thank you very much. Sonny says, I was in the active reserve, got a letter, just ignored it. Right. They can't prove that you got it. And if they start coming door to door to drag people out, like in, first of all, that would go a lot different in the US. And second of all, um, that we're in a way worse situation. I definitely think that it's possible. I think it was Canadian Prepper. I definitely others have said it too, but he was the one I heard it from first, where this baffling, just utterly baffling, like border policy where they're not just allowing people in, but actively fomenting mass migration of military age men could certainly be that they see this coming and they want a reserve pool of people that they can say, hey, we know you're all here illegally. You're going to get deported if you don't, that this is the path to citizenship. Sign up. And then if you survive a war with China and Russia, you can become a citizen. I would not at all be surprised if that's at least something they've thought about, if not actively planning for, because we've seen the voluntary signups for the militaries dropping off a cliff, especially among like just regular white Americans, which was like their bread and butter for joining the military for many years, and just don't want to deal with it anymore. Seeing what's become, seeing what they're doing to people who don't want to get vaccines, have like trainee generals and also their nonsense. And then the causes themselves are something that none of us support for the most part. So, and he says, I'm in the same boat. I'm a retired Marine, 21 years of active duty, Afghanistan, Iraq with 90% VA disability. Thing will have to be really bad to bring me back. Yeah, exactly. They start dragging us out of the fucking VA waiting room and putting us in some multicam. Something's gone seriously wrong. Because like I said, I need to sign. I'm almost certainly eligible for some percentage of disability, which I need to look into for the VA because I have extensive hearing loss in 1 year. Like I said, I have a major spinal surgery, all sorts of stuff. Get greens, Sonny says, get greens directly from the farmers at harvest time. Yeah, if you have access to in your area to get stuff from the farmers, especially like small organic family farm type stuff, I definitely recommend it. It's something I plan on looking into a lot more in the future. I got two chest freezers. If I can buy like a partial cow or something like that, or sheep, I really love lamb. I just it's so delicious. If I when I finally break and move to a compound in the sticks, it'll be a sheep farm. And I think it was my girlfriend was asking me, she's like, why do you want to like raise sheep? I'm like, I don't want to raise sheep. That would be a pain. It would be a giant pain in the ass to be a farmer. But I want to have access to food supply that I know is not going to be disrupted, is not going to be adulterated. It's not, all that stuff. Because they really having a war on our food, especially our meat. And lamb, first of all, I find it delicious. And I think for like a hobby farm level operation, it's a hell of a lot easier to deal with an animal the size of a sheep in any aspect of that, whether it's the processing, the butchering, the medical stuff, any of that, than it is for like cows. That's huge. They're enormous, obviously. And it's a whole nother level of operation for transportation, butchering and processing, feeding, medical issues, any of that stuff. So I'm definitely going to have to go the chicken or sheep or chicken and sheep route. Maybe get some alpacas or something weird like that. But I'm a brokey right now, so that's not on my farm isn't on the schedule just yet. I live in New York. They have migrants in hotels. Oh yeah, it's just getting insane. I mean, I try not to be too conspiratorial. And the one thing I always come back to is I've seen the true believers at every level. So it's definitely possible that the people at the higher levels are just dumb true believers. But these policies and decisions are just so insane and so myopic that there just has to be at least some of it has to be to some ulterior motive, to some, you know, other than just the ideology, the liberal ideology. Because the alternative is a worse. The alternative to which particular, Rico? I didn't know what you're responding to. Olson says, my last active time was the first Gulf War, so if they call me, they're really desperate. Yeah, if we start getting calls, we should just be like, hey guys, time to tighten the bunker door lid, because if they want me up there, and I'm probably on the younger side for some of you guys talking about, but like I said, I'm 40 years old. I've been out for years, major back surgery. So yeah, goats are easy to raise and they eat anything. That's true. Goats are great too. They are not quite as good as sheep in terms of like the taste. I don't like it, but I like that like gamey meat. I really like goat. I like sheep. I would definitely raise goats, and they're probably a little hardier than sheep, but I imagine it's fairly similar. process. And even rabbits, right? We were talking about rabbits earlier. They're really easy to raise. Um, you don't get a lot of fat. Like these domestic rabbits are a different story. You're not going to die from eating domestic rabbits. And I would like to see the studies on that because I don't think that the rabbit starvation thing is like a myth per se, but I imagine they're specifically talking about the meat itself. If you were to eat the skin and the organs, rabbits obviously are mammals too. They have fat in their bodies. They have to. So if you were just eating like just a straight up rabbit meat and nothing else for months, yes, you could probably die of not having enough fat. But if you were eating the entire rabbit, making stews with its bone marrow and everything like that, even he's making blood pudding and stuff, like you would be fine. You're not going to fucking die. And especially domestic rabbits, and especially if you're supplementing at all with any other type of food that has fat in it. Raising beef is not so bad for me. I've not done it for some time now. That's cool. I think it would be a shitload of work. And like, it's definitely in a grid down scenario. You can't like butcher a cow by yourself, I imagine. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems like that would be, I mean, you would have to do it in the middle of a field, like if you shot a moose or something and then carry out big hunks of meat. But like on an actual like processing level, if you're like, all right, it's time for these 8 cows to go, you have to have a pretty substantial operation, I imagine. Whereas if you have a sheep or a goat and you need to just hang it up and go to town, that's a lot more feasible. Hot tip, don't eat gator fat. It's horrific, but gator itself is delicious. I've definitely had gator. I don't know if I've just had like a blob of gator fat, but I like gator. It is the kind of like the color and consistency of fish, but not nearly as strong of a flavor. So it's kind of just like chicken that looks and flaky like fish, kind of. Same with like rattlesnake. Rattlesnake was good. Just need some butter on it. I would eat those things, some big lizards. Find any gators in Canada, I'll remember that. Yeah, you'll have to Canadian preppers, right? And we're all going to die in global warming. Then maybe you'll get some gators up there eventually. But for now, you're a little bit far north. Will not eat the bugs. Good. You can feed them to your chickens, though. Raise the bugs with your garbage and then feed them to your chickens. Utah Mike says, need a way to preserve the meat. Certainly, that can be done with canning, smoking, if you have a freeze dryer, or depending, if you just have like an animals and, you could just eat the meat as you are. I mean, obviously, you're going to get a lot at once, even with something the size of a sheep. So you do have to have some way of preserving it. But if you have alternate power, even freezing is an option. There's one reptile in Canada, Castro's kid. Yeah, the reptile people that run the government. Beyond that, it's probably not too many reptiles up there. Salting, yeah, salting's an option. You have to have a lot of salt, shitload of salt. But if you have, like I said, if you have a freezer, and alternate power supply, if you have canning methods, you can can meat. If you have a freeze dryer, you could freeze dry meat, or you add salting or smoking. Grasshoppers are good for fishing, yeah, and for the chickens. Pretty cool. So I'll stay on here a few more minutes. I want to let you guys know I want to jump on tonight for sure because to say happy Easter to everyone, let you guys know I'm still alive. I've been playing a lot more poker recently to get that sweet coin. And the casino that I play at most often is running a promotion in April where I'm going to be a true degenerate, where like the people who get the most hours playing cash games are entered into a free roll tournament where you're guaranteed like 1,200 bucks and you could potentially get up to like 20,000 if you go deep in the tournament. But I have to play basically full-time hours of poker for April. So I'm probably not going to be making too many videos. I'm going to be a mad degenerate. Sun drying definitely works out here. You're more likely to get it just cooked in the sun. And I have the sun oven works so well out here. I may eventually buy another one of those things just to be able to do more with them. Because the sun oven is great because you can fit like a whole pot in there. But if you also like, I think it's part of my plan for pasteurizing water. You can do that in the sun oven. You can dehydrate in the sun oven. You can do all sorts of stuff. So I may eventually buy an. I think they're for anywhere. If you're in like the southern, especially Southwest US, it should absolutely be one of the things you get. Sun oven is fantastic. Um, and super useful out here. 50 pounds of meat is one person's for 10 days. That's all you have to eat. That would be a lot, actually. I don't need to eat 5 pounds of meat a day to survive just on meat. I almost eat just meat right now. And if I'm not a big eater, and like 2 pounds of meat is like a lot for me for a day. So I definitely wouldn't eat 50 pounds in 10 days. I would need max 20 pounds. Yeah, that's insane. 5 pounds of meat a day is a huge amount. That's like three times what I eat right now. Like most of the time, I can eat a pound of meat in a meal if it's like just that's all I'm eating, which is a lot of times what I'm doing. But that's like a big meal to me. Ugh. So if I had two of those a day, like that's yes, Brian, I am definitely making that. I will try to make that this month. I have like a script written out and everything for the footwear shit fan footwear video because I do think that's important and I know you've been asking about it. You definitely deserve it. So I'll do my best to do that this month. But absolutely, if I don't, it will next month for sure. But I will try to take a break from my degeneracy playing poker all, full time to to uh to do the footwear vid because I know you've had that coming and I've been slacking big time. Says you'll eat it or you'll lose weight. You need 3,000 calories per day. If that's all you have, it's 600 calories per pound. I mean, that's only the leanest meats are like 600 calories per pound. Um, but that's, that's not unrealistic. But 3,000 calories is high, a little bit high for a lot of people. It's not unreasonable. A lot of people who, especially men who are bigger, that's going to be what you're actually burning. But if you have um, like I said, a can of Spam or something like that, or that type of that level of fattiness, which you're not just if you're eating like the whole animal, you're not just gonna get the lean cuts, you're gonna get the fat and the organ meat and all that stuff too. So most people could survive off a couple pounds of meat a day. If it's lean meat, you're right, you would need a lot more. But this goes back to what we were saying, where like if you want to like lose weight, it is extremely difficult to just eat too much, like just not super fatty meats. If you just have steak or chicken breast, it's like impossible to get fat almost because it just is so much eating. Like you said, like you have to eat like if you get like relatively lean steak, 600 to 800 calories um a pound, you have to eat pounds and pounds of meat to be over your baseline for a lot of times. But also keep in mind that you can certainly gain weight only eating 200 or 300 calories over your baseline if you're sedentary. Yeah, fat keeps you fuller for a lot longer too. Swimmers eat 10,000 calories per day. Some of them do. Yeah, but there's an element too that your body adapts to what you're doing. So once it realizes that it's adapting to output, to performance, then it doesn't necessarily just store all the food that you're eating. It's not that they're necessarily burning 10,000 calories per day, even if they're eating that and not gaining weight. Yeah, you don't necessarily just automatically store fat. Because I mean, like people, there's always this argument. I was gonna make a whole video on this, but it just has nothing to do with prepping per se. Because but there's so many people talk past each other with regards to like the calories in, calories out debate of weight loss. And it is absolutely true when you're talking about losing weight that there's a certain amount of calories your body needs, your basic metabolic rate, that if you eat fewer calories than that, you absolutely have to burn the fat that's in your body and lose weight because that is just thermodynamics, it's just physics that your body is using energy, that energy has to come from somewhere. So if you eat less calories than you're burning, you will lose weight. But people then kind of also have that there's a second argument that some people think that if you eat X amount of calories over your basic metabolic rate, that you're going to gain weight no matter what in the same amount. And that's just nonsense. So like I said, your body adapts in different ways to what you're doing. And also calories are not just calories, despite what people say. And anytime they say that a calorie is a calorie, I say, well, a gallon of motor oil has 20,000 calories in it. That's all you're saying when you're saying a calories. How much energy is released when you put something in a bomb calorimeter and burn it off. So if you want to chug a gallon of motor oil a day, how much weight do you think you're going to gain? Or we were just talking about the rabbit starvation diet. You can eat incredible just protein as your only macro. You could eat 10,000 calories a day and you will die after a few months because your body needs fat. So obviously calories are not just calories in every scenario. Your body reacts, yeah, instant release. Body reacts in different hormonal ways depending on just genetics and stuff. And you cannot tell me that someone would have the exact same blood work, body fat level, hormone profile, et cetera, after eating lean steak for a month, absolutely pure white cane sugar. That's all they ate for a month, same amount of calories, or olive oil, chugging olive oil or butter, whatever. Like different things are going to happen to your body. You're not going to gain the exact same amount of weight. Some people might fucking die, like I said, if it's just protein or something. So obviously, if you ingest less calories than maintenance, you're going to lose weight, but it is not automatically true that the same amount of calories over your basic metabolic rate are always going to give you the same result, especially depending on what you're doing physically. Because I really truly believe that the data shows that when you are making sure your body has to adapt to another goal, which is some kind of physical performance, then it doesn't try to store food in the same way as it does when you're just sedentary because it's adapting to the stimulus of we need to get better at this thing. Most of the time, your body is fixing the problem in the easiest way possible. It's saying it's hard when I do this, so it doesn't want you to do that. It conserves energy in other ways. But when you basically beat it into submission and it realizes that this is happening, so the way to make it easier is to get better at that. Then you build muscle, then you burn even more calories just sitting around. That's why you see these Instagram girls. It'll be like some 115-pound little girl with abs, and she'll be eating 26, 2,800 calories a day still having abs because their body is in the mode of adapting to this goal of performance and not just storing food. It's like our main problem here that your body's feeling is adapting to this stress, which is the working out. What do we got on here? Chicken fat is a great sort of fat. Yeah, I mean, all animal fat is great. Ooh, duck fat. Duck is so good. Like I was saying before, I love the more gamey meats. And greasier meat. So like everything from bison, which is only slightly more gamey than beef. It's actually hard to tell sometimes. But like sheep, goat, duck, I love all that stuff so much. You can't choke down enough lean meat to keep from losing weight. Very difficult, extremely difficult. You have to be basically like a massive problem with your eating, like a truly like a disordered eating to eat enough like steak or chicken breast to like seriously gain weight. Your body uses stored calories from liver, you get ketones produced. Yep. Do you know what a 6 foot tall marathon weighs? So yeah, I mean obviously, and then look at sprinters. They're jacked. I don't need to look like a marathoner. And you can train for both though. There are some people who have proven those guys out there with like I think I know way back in the day, I forget what the guy's name was. One of the first I heard about qualified for Kona, which is the main Ironman race, and he had a 700 plus deadlift. So he's like this jack dude that was still had enough endurance to do a competitive Ironman time. Which, for those who don't know, an Ironman triathlon is like a full marathon. What is it? 1.2 miles of swimming and like 100 miles of biking or something like that. Something crazy. I get those right. So it's 140. Oh, so it's even more than that. It's more than 100. But yeah, fucking long. So obviously you can train for both. You're not going to be the most competitive at either particular one. Like I don't think you can be the best deadlifter in the world and then also be the best marathon runner. This just your body has to adapt too differently. But you can be extremely good at both things still. At least some people can. You went to order sheep? One day, bro. One day. You have to let me know what the sheep life is like because like I said, I'm lazy. I don't want to grow a bunch of animals, but I know I'm going to have to one day. Ground bison does equals good hamburgers. Waterfowl have a lot of fat in the fall, but not in winter or early spring. Makes sense. What in crayons that can sustain life? What's in crayons? I don't know. Ask the Marines. It's a joke that the Marines are crayon eaters because they're like borderline retarded or something. Has nothing to do with crayons actually being any sort of nutrition. Maybe back in the day they were made from some kind of real wax that might have had something in it, but yeah, it's just a joke for military people. Kind of like how all Navy people are gay, all the Marines are dumb crayon eaters. That's the joke. Waterfowl get fat mostly on farmer's grain, natural food, steroids, or you don't get jacked. Yeah, dude, I need to gear up. I'm so skinny because I haven't been. I'm finally back to where I can like think I can do real workouts now. But look at this, man. I wouldn't be surprised if I had like a 12-inch neck right now. Terrible. Need to get back on the weights. Yeah, there's multiple weight categories, and yeah, the little guys can do insane. I don't know if anyone's ever done a 5x body weight. I think a 3x deadlift is about the most. Or no, I'm thinking of like a clean and jerk. They've done some crazy numbers, these guys. It's insane. I did see that Whistling Diesel is building the Killdozer. That's so awesome. Someone sent me that video. That's going to be amazing. I definitely will be following along on that. But I think I'm going to call tonight. Speaking of all this food, now I need to go do some eating. But I appreciate you guys. And Brian, I will make that the Boots video. Any book, survival fiction books you recommend? I always liked Lucifer's Hammer. And I actually, so 5X is a record for deadlifts. That's insane. I've recently read the first of the series of the EMP Doctors, author Arthur Bradley. He did a survival fiction book. I forget what it's called. I think it's just called The Survivalist or something. That was uh, decently good. I liked it. So I would check that out. And I have the next one that I'm going to read too. So you might like that as well. But I appreciate it, guys. And yeah, 5X deadlift, 5 times bodyweight deadlift is insane. That would be like 800 pounds for me or something. I'm like 160 right now. Yeah, 800. Yeah, exactly. 800 pounds. Not gonna happen anytime soon. I've hit 350 before I had my surgery, so we'll see if I can get back up to that. But I would need to more than double. That's insane. And Lucifer's Hammer is great. I also liked Lights Out and 1 Second After. Those are good. So if you want like hard sci-fi, you can go after Quantum Storms. That's pretty good. And yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. I will, like I said, I'll be trying to make videos, at least the live streams this month, but because I'm doing a lot of degenerate poker playing, I might not be able to make a lot of other videos. But appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Stay safe on